Sam was just giving me some fun trivia about Humphrey Bogart here.
I guess on the set of The African Queen, he was so drunk that the bugs in the jungle ignored him and all went for Katharine Hepburn.
Now think, are you good enough at anything in your life that insects ignore you? No, but that's how good Mr. Bogart was at drinking. And I think we can all aspire to that.
I certainly do.
Every year, 4th of July, reunions, Christmas, I try to get that drunk.
There has to be a certain level of skill, because it's not just, oh man, I got way too drunk last night. No, he needed to maintain the I got way too drunk last night blood alcohol for, an entire, let's say, month or so that they spend in the jungle shooting that.
The only time I have approached that light was the first. Not even the second, because I had to break it up with, seeing historical monuments and shit. But the first time I went to Tokyo, probably the drunkest 2.5 weeks of my life. And I keep getting these questions about what I did. And it shows such a fundamental misunderstanding of what I was after.
I think the drunkest week that I've spent in my life was that one time that I visited you at Princeton.
Yeah, we almost died. I don't know how we made it back into that room.
We were there in the room for much of it. I think there was about a 7-hour span of time where I was not drunk. And I was there the entire week.
I only really believe the whole drag ball thing happened because of the photos.
I forgot about that shit. They visited from Philly.
Yeah. So, way more intelligent topic than that this week, for once. In order to sort of reset our systems after delving into the world of Komi-san and the inability of several people to breed, partially because of external forces, partially because of their own fucking interior fuck-ups, but to distance ourselves from that, we decided to return... Remember that just shining green light Hal Jordan uses to recharge himself, just that lantern battery? Full Metal Alchemist is a little like that for us.
Not even a little bit like that for us. That is a show that I sometimes watch, or the manga that I sometimes go to when I need to remind myself that I actually like this.
Man, it's even a little more basic for me. I just need to remind myself I like the concept of speculative fiction storytelling.
Jesus.
In terms of style and trends, by the way, it's had a very interesting specific point in that it's very into the hard magic system thing that became more of a fantasy thing as time went on.
What always fascinated me about the system that she came up with for alchemy is how structured it is, how amazingly hard and structured it is, as is, the case in a whole lot of manga, anime stuff, in terms of world building. They really, they like rule books, right?
Yeah.
But it manages to be a big set of rules, and only a big set of rules, rather, there's no fucking power creep. That's what I was trying to say. There's no fucking power creep in Full Metal Alchemist. Alchemy is what alchemy is. It can be used to do various things, some of them large, some of them small, but never...
don't you think it would be improved by, someone's alchemy score going up?
Yes, there's never that. There's never, some new fucking alchemist who's got, some fucking gimmick that they love to fucking wax poetic about, for, 2 or 3 episodes. Really long, poorly animated episodes that were not present in the manga.
I see you trying to skirt around the words domain expansion right now, and it's very fun.
We'll get to that. We'll get to villains who are like that. And the fact that I've been rereading Naruto for an upcoming episode. An upcoming series of episodes, in fact. Stay tuned. But...
Oh yeah, for those of you who enjoyed the ritual execution of Legend of Korra,
that was 4 episodes. This one's going to be, by my count, 10. It is going to be pretty much an entire season of this podcast, if we did in fact break them up into seasons, which I do not think that we do.
They are broken up into seasons when I laze out of editing for some time and say, a new season of Weeaboo Hell is starting, everyone, upon return, which happened once.
Okay, so we're currently on season 2 right now?
Yep.
Good to know.
Season 2 is, I think, 70 out of 86 episodes of Weeaboo Hell.
Well, it's like, the one cartoon show that starts out with 12 episodes and then the next season's 50. I think Steven Universe was kind of like, no. Star Wars: The Forces of Evil was like that.
Great.
I like that show. I don't care what anyone says about the ending. I like that show.
I had a fun time with it. I think people were very ready to reuse their favorite jokes about Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Where first off, those jokes worked way better in Final Fantasy Tactics because they just had the clean link of get back in your wheelchair, Newt. I digress. But yeah, Sam has some advanced thoughts that he'd like to share. And then I will, I don't know, make jokes about butts or something. It's a delicate balance of power in Weeaboo Hell.
Hiromu Arakawa's seminal manga and then anime, the second anime, not the first one, Full Metal Alchemist, has been talked about to fucking death by everyone who has ever watched anime.
I think it speaks to the strength of the material that the fucking botched version was as well received as it is.
True, yeah.
Like someone entirely playing improvisational notes over that melody.
I do not have too
At the end of the day, it was okay.
Yeah, I don't have too many kind words to say about the 2003 adaptation other than, well, they got the first half right, I guess. And even Brotherhood, which rushed through, that first half in 10 episodes, made it feel less rushed if you didn't even know that yet.
That is a thing, that is
Like,
a thing.
I remember it being so long in between the 2003 Full Metal Alchemist and when I watched Brotherhood that I didn't actually notice that they were kind of like, okay, yada yada yadaing, that first, 20 or so episodes.
I had finished undergrad when I watched Brotherhood. Wild.
Are we sure? It came
I remember
out in 2009
watching it.
and we were watching it live. You graduated high school in 2009.
Oh, we're having a Berenstain Bears moment. I'm gonna trust his recollection because I drink a lot more.
I don't know.
In those days.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
I might have been there going, I really hope that Ed can get his elbows back. He gave up his elbows for his sister. It's very important.
When it comes to drinking, Denard is Barry Bonds and I am Albert Pujols. I'm trying to beat it.
But yeah, onto your point here.
All right. I happened to be playing Fallout New Vegas again, as I often do. I think this might have even come up in a previous episode. That I've been doing this for the last couple of weeks, and one of the more interesting things about New Vegas is that you've got these smattering of like 9 or 10 characters or so who have like these really fascinating ideologies as they pertain to, okay, here's what the world was and here's what I think the world should now be. Right?
And they all sort of tinted differently.
And they're all kind of tinted differently, and they're all, none of them are entirely correct, but none of them are entirely wrong either. They all, are coming from interesting places and make, interesting points about, like, here are the mistakes of the old world, and here's how I'm going to, correct those mistakes.
Caesar's entire argument is just the lyrics to Welcome to the Jungle.
Yes. And the, that whole beat, is what makes New Vegas as interesting to me as it is.
If you want a depressing version of the game's fucking story, make a heel courier and join Caesar's Legion and just get all that ambient dialogue.
Oh yeah, you can sell Arcade Ganon to him.
Wild.
It's really fucking awful. No, like, heel courier working for Caesar is, like, one of the most despicable fucking human beings.
Yeah.
Like, worse than Caesar. I think the epilogue says that Caesar is afraid of you. So, with that in mind, I was thinking about, okay, what is a show that has something kind of like what New Vegas has, where it's got a big cast of characters that all have really well-developed worldviews and philosophies. And, of course, the obvious answer is Full Metal Alchemist. So that is what we're going to talk about. I've picked out not every character
it would have been
because
really
there's a bunch
funny
of them.
after all this build-up. You just said Crayon Shin-Chan, and we just played that straight for half an hour.
We could do it. I just would have needed to go back and watch Crayon Shin-Chan.
A lot of sight gags.
There's a lot of them. But Full Metal Alchemist manages to have this really large cast of really interesting characters, and most of these characters have a pretty interesting worldview. Some of them better developed than others just because of screen time and, their role in the story. Like, Alex Louise Armstrong has a moral code, certainly, but never has the most well-developed, outlook, I guess.
It is certainly not dwelled upon. I do like the one flourish that he just hasn't been promoted because he wasn't ready to go psycho in disturbed terms.
Yes, no, that's awesome. That's actually really fucking cool. All those little details that. Like he's still just Major Armstrong because he was not. He didn't want to fucking do it. So this is where his career kind of ended.
Like they handed him his purge mask and he just stared down and said, "Why do I have to be a rooster?"
Are you trying to say something? So what I've done is I've kind of combed through this series and I've come up with my favorite characters in terms of, all right, here is a character who's done some thinking, right? And they have, an interesting philosophy, an interesting worldview. And my idea was we're going to talk about all of those, compare these characters to one another, and see which of these characters we ultimately feel like we jive with the most. Like you and then me.
Fair enough. And if your list of focus characters is different, then sorry, we will send you your refunds in the mail. But that's assuming you've paid your Weeble Hell membership dues up until now. You have been paying your dues, right? $20 a month?
We are going to cut you off if you haven't.
I mean, we'll let you catch up, send that shit in and, everything's Gucci.
But, WinRAR is not a free service.
Do you think they just throw daggers at the word 7-zip at night?
I don't know if there are any humans involved in WinRAR anymore. I think they programmed an AI to sort of perpetuate it and then went off and did different things.
I know what you meant. Because you've been talking about New Vegas for half an hour, I was envisioning Mr. House. But let's get into Full Metal Alchemist.
All right. So, the characters that I have sort of gathered, I guess, that have, interesting worldviews that I feel like talking about are, of course, Solf J. Kimbley, right, who I think is probably the most interesting villain in that series. Mm-hmm. Case to be made for what? Wrath? There's a case to be made for Wrath.
Scar's position changes, but he commands a presence, I guess.
I actually forgot about Envy in all this. Because it's Envy or Kimbley are probably the two best.
Do you want to start there since he's not on the diagram?
I spent this entire time not thinking about Envy when I really should have.
He would really resent that.
You'd be jealous, secretly. She, who knows?
In terms of small flourishes that aren't dwelled upon, all the homunculi have a version of that Armstrong thing, which is that father was just trying to well, he had multiple motivations, and the family thing is, I don't know, amusing or what have you, but the idea of trying to purge yourself of imperfections and creating your little gaggle of insane assholes is a
and Envy ends up becoming this fun microcosm of that.
He does, and also like that small idea that trying to put yourself through that process creates an even more insane asshole in the end.
Yes, no, that's great. Okay, so we'll talk about Envy. We're gonna add, this was unexpected, but we're gonna add Envy to the conversation. So, Solf J. Kimbley, the homunculus Envy. We're gonna talk about Olivier Armstrong, because she ends up having a little bit more of a developed worldview than her brother does. We're gonna talk about Ed Elric. We're going to talk about Azumi Curtis, and we are going to talk about Greed 2.
Too Greed, Too Furious. Okay, so...
Otherwise known as Greedling. I always like that nickname. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cute.
Envy gets to take advantage of the medium in the character development, because they get to do something that is super clumsy in text, and you can just have it right there in comic format. In which this person who is super into themselves and their superiority on the inside is ugly like me.
The fun, very sort of efficient little storytelling thing that they do with Envy is Envy just goes on and on and on about human weakness.
Yeah.
Just they have based most of who they are as a person off of, how much they despise, humans and how much they disdain humans and how humans suck this, humans suck that. Look at you pathetic people doing. It reminds me a whole lot of macho Spartan Punisher cop skull kind of character with like the fucking Molon Lave sort of bumper stickers who define
I get what you
themselves
mean. Like
by
they
their
have
enemies.
they have those narrative captions just describing how low these scum are.
Exactly. They do not exist without this, group of people that they so despise, just the suck at libs type. Because like without libs, right? Who even are you? You don't really exist. You sort of exist as a sort of anthropomorphized opposition, right? And Envy very, very deep down knows this and hates themselves about this, or hates this about themselves and hates themselves because of this, and of course takes it out on, their victims.
A very simple and efficient character, and kind of just one of my favorite, like, at least as far as the emotions are conveyed, just sort of heals in this entire series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always a fan because it's such an easy thing to botch, but when you can sort of humanistically render what is essentially a fantastic concept, that is always something that's sort of impressive to me. In the bubble of fantasy and sci-fi we spend, like, 70% of our time in as media consumers.
I would say, yeah, close to 70%.
It's such a simple thing, but the way this person lashes out because they just feel small on the inside all the time. Like, my favorite just manifestation of this actually wasn't the Mustang fight.
Which is a great fight.
But it was actually when Ed and Ling were trapped in that void with him, and he immediately just goes, "We're fucked, nothing matters, just kill each other." And maybe in my own flaws in this world, I can just appreciate that micro-catastrophizing breakdown.
Oh, yeah, because Ed's like, no, slow down.
Nothing matters, Wolfgang.
we will get to Ed and how much I adore him as a character, as though I have not spent a good, probably combined 2 hours or so on this podcast talking about how much I adore Ed as a character.
He's really taken up your third place seed behind your Jaegers and Aznables in this hill.
He might actually be the first place seed. I've just spent more time talking about the other two. We'll see.
Oh man, we're gonna like the Weeaboo Hell like fanboy gushing invitational.
New episode idea.
Okay.
We'll do it at some point. But in terms of Envy, there is this theme that runs through Full Metal Alchemist that is not one of the main themes, but it is a theme, which is like this sort of theme of personal inadequacy and feeling kind of incomplete, right? So that is, Ed is without his arm and leg. Al is without his body. People who are incomplete, right? Or see themselves as incomplete.
If you haven't caught on, she's very into literal physical tags of these things.
Exactly. And here is Envy, who is a personification of this particular theme. The theme of, like, I have been created incomplete. God left me unfinished, to quote a now former YouTuber. No, I think that was actually iDubbbz who said that.
Oh, I thought that wasn't Filthy?
Well, no, it was a Filthy Frank video. It was not him who delivered that line. And so, Envy thus becomes this sort of fun mouthpiece for this idea, for this theme of there is something fundamentally incomplete about who I am, and nothing can actually be done to fix it. Or what has to be done to fix it is so monumental in the effort that it would take. For instance, like not having one's arm. In real life, you can, there's prosthesis and stuff, but you can never actually have your arm again.
Yeah.
And so the condition that Ed and Al find themselves in, where they are without, limbs and their entire body in Al's case, ends up like a kind of fun metaphor for that idea, where like something about me is so immensely wrong and not there and incomplete, and like how do you expect me to be able to find this about myself? It's not fucking there. And what am I to do except hate other people who have that? And that is what envy is.
And we do learn that the way to cope with that condition is not to spark an interesting civil war.
You probably shouldn't.
I mean, nice resume packer, but not.
Yeah. I drink. That's it's not the most creative of solutions, but it's been working pretty well for me so far.
So just drum my fingers together in the darkness. Just mumble the word soon.
That is what I appreciate about Envy. And what I love about Envy's philosophy is how it goes fucking nowhere. Like, there's no catharsis attached to it. There's nothing that resolves the actual problem there. So it ends up being a very bad philosophy.
It gets him very crispy.
Yes, exceptionally crispy. And, like, so crispy that he, like, recognizes how hollow it is at the very end of it, right? How much of a fucking dead end it is, like nihilism. That he's like, nope, I'll just die.
Oh man, just pulling out the stone is such a...
Yeah. In the dub, it's kind of silly because, like, the really squeaky, high-pitched voice.
Oh wait, the little bit of Narm there is amusing.
Yeah, I like the dub for Brotherhood in general, but, like, that particular scene is a little bit robbed of its impact by
a little soft ball drop. Like, you can hear
he sounds like the Wicked Witch of the West getting melted.
I'm melting!
So there's greed and how fun greed is in in terms of, their outlook on life. Not just how, like, they act and how they are and, how, like, the fun sort of, like... I totally skipped over the whole shape-shifting thing and how that is just, like, a whole fun metaphor for, like, I hate myself, I wish I could be literally anyone else.
Hopefully, those of you with the attention span to listen to a podcast fucking episode this long can stitch that one together.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're getting to greed.
Well, getting off of greed. Now, Kimberly ends up, I think, his philosophy, alien though it may be, is not a dead end. At least not to him, the way that Envy's is.
The fun that this series likes to have with him is that it is at least, I guess, internally complete, like his idea of what behaviors are sort of consistent, in his words, elegant.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to like the idea of things that stick to their assigned role in the world, like doctors are meant to heal, soldiers are meant to kill, and if he sees a soldier getting weepy or a doctor pulling a Marco, that's where he gets grumbly, aside from when he gets into, his sort of joking man business. But
there is this fantastic thread that appeared on the Civilization Reddit once, where a dude basically set up the world with some mods, activated. Set up a world that was Earth, right? And all of the civilizations were active. You cannot do this without mods. Mm-hmm. He played as Polynesia and basically just had one unit hide in the ice caps, just, like, away from everything, so that he could observe the game itself but never participate in it. And he set it up on everything on hardest difficulty, with a gigantic, like, turn length kind of deal, and just pushed and watched the world go and watched things progress and tried to figure out who is going to be out, who is going to come out on top. Now, this never actually ended up becoming complete, although because they're busted, it was looking like the Shoshone were ultimately going to come out on top.
God. Fucking early game earthquake.
Exactly, yeah, no, like, they dominate the early game and they could, like, clean up in the late game, too. I remember Portugal and England got eliminated extremely early. Maybe the Celts, Elizabeth. Too. No, not the Celts. Japan did not make it either. Oh, none of this matters. I'm getting off track here. The point is that this would be catnip to Solf J. Kimbley. Everything in its place, everything fulfilling its role, and let's see how this all goes. Let's see how this goes down. He is interested, and he says it out loud. Like, I want to see what fucking happens when, the world order that we have lived under for, this amount of time changes. When the homunculi, who have honestly been in control this entire time, so it's like, is anything actually changing? And then you could go into that whole thing, right? I want to see what happens when, Father and the homunculi have their way. And I want to see if they can, even. I want to see, like, your best up against our best, or really not our, but their best. And,
right.
Here's me, just having a ball this entire time.
Oh man, what's that Weird Al song? This Is the Life.
Exactly.
It's
if money can't buy happiness, I guess I'll have to rent it.
It's kind of a inversion of the Ling Greed relationship, and just him getting subsumed into pride, and how, I mean, obviously it's just a text level comment on here is someone who's basically looking down on the entire human experience. Of course, he gets subsumed. Plot text level, I do enjoy how thoroughly and critically that dicks Mr. Pride over, but
That was fun, yes. One thing that I always thought
you're
was...
behaving inelegantly.
One thing that I always thought was fascinating with Kimberly was that how amazingly... how much time he seems to have been thinking, I mean, he had no shortage of it, about the taking of life. Mm-hmm. He is not, Barry the Chopper, who just kind of takes life, really, without thinking about
Barry
it.
the Chopper just pretty much just a B-roll of horrorcore lyrics on loop.
Yeah. He is actually very, deliberate about it. He knows exactly what it is, exactly what it means, exactly what he is taking from people, exactly what his place in all of this. And, he gives, in the backstory, Hawkeye the best advice that she ever receives. Never forget the people you kill because they will never forget you. And, it gives her a better respect for the work that she does. She's a sniper, right?
Yeah.
She's done having illusions about what she does after he talks to her, and I always really like that a whole lot. And he has no illusions about what he does. He just, the difference between the two of them is that he's not really doing it in service of anything other than, his own sort of wouldn't it be fun if we did this kind of deal, right?
When you lay it all out like this, I am just really impressed that he is not a terrible fucking character. I can see in my head Jared Leto's Kimberly.
He even kind of fucking looks like him, too.
Right?
It was years and years and years before Suicide Squad.
And even a little of Jared Leto's Kimberly leaked into the 2003 anime.
It's fascinating, actually, how that happened.
And I guess there's a very fine line when, I don't know, you just sort of enter with this character who read, the first half of a Nietzsche book. And how you render that, and what is sympathetic and non-sympathetic about them, and I guess it's her consciousness of that sort of, to borrow the TV tropes thing. Obviously, there is a black and white morality thing at work where he is very much in black, but in terms of the logic behind it, she takes time to establish that sort of blue and orange thing where she's essentially just sort of working on an alien system of codes. It's like whenever you are in any kind of civics or social science context and you have the guy who has read Leviathan back to front and thinks he's on to something, it's always a weird conversation because you're not really arguing from the same set of moral or logical priors on what fucking society is and why you're in it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what conversations with him become like.
Leviathan was Hobbes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my Kimberly point, I guess.
The tiger philosopher. I think my favorite moment with Kimberly, and there's the fun one where he's subsumed into Pride and ends up damaging Pride as a result. That's a fun one. It's a lot of people's favorite. My favorite is just a 3-minute long scene that he has with Winry, where he drives her back from Briggs down to the train station in the village below. And he just tells her about how he knew her parents and how he respected them immensely and how she should be proud of them. And then he wishes her well and sends her on her way. And it's this, this character that you've sort of come to know as this, psychotic, maybe slightly joking man type. Sort of, there is something about him that is not just, I really don't want
tryouts.
Yeah, I don't want to use joking man as a shorthand here. There's something about him that is not just driven by psychotic urges. It's actually one of the best cues you get that he is absolutely not driven by psychotic urges. There is gears there inside of him that turn, right? That have rules, not so much rules, but that have there are things that he actually believes.
Yeah.
And that is what makes him as interesting a villain as it does, is because if he didn't believe anything or he believed actively in nothing, that wouldn't have been as interesting as who he actually ends up being, which is the sort of weirdly, not lawful evil exactly character, but like a character who is I don't know, how would you describe it?
I mean, I mentioned the orange and blue thing because he's basically someone with an internally sort of coherent idea of what is okay to do.
There is a belief system there, I guess.
And it is moving diagonally with our vertical line of morality here.
And that is why he's so fucking fascinating to watch. Why he's so interesting to watch.
Oh, that's the first geometric moral metaphor I've made in my life.
The first of many, perhaps. All right. I think I want to go into Ed next. I think I want to save Izumi Curtis for last because she ends up. We'll talk about Curtis. I want to talk about Ed. And I specifically want to talk about this thing that is not. That a whole lot of noise is never made about. But I've mentioned it before, even on this show. Which is the fact that Ed does not kill anyone in this series. Not once. In a series that is, like. A lot of people die in this show, right?
It's true.
Both incidental and named characters. This series is never really shy about killing people, and this series is never shy about the good guys killing people. Ed refuses to do it. Just out and out.
I remember being amused at the number of... Because normally when you sort of get the sort of horrorcore character, they never really do much of their thing on screen. The number of incidental kills Barry got to... I remember he got to just lop off.
Oh, yeah, just like a whole bunch of like, oh, God, why?
Like,
We didn't do anything.
I don't know what it is in her contract. They just said, like, okay, if there's no arterial spray, it doesn't count.
It's still shonen.
Though I guess they have their own, like, internal system on how violence is rendered, but that's a whole other topic. The FCC episode of Weeaboo Hell. Okay, so you want to talk about Ed never killing.
I want to talk about Ed and his sort of, like, no-kill policy. He even, like... There's the case of, like, the mannequin soldiers, but he doesn't even manage to affect them at all. He tries to disrupt them. It doesn't work. And he refuses, he refuses to even kill, like, that Slicer guy and his brother. He does...
Great time.
He does a whole lot of work sort of being a fun opposite to Kimberly, right, in this regard. He has this whole thing where he seems to hold in great respect not people who take life, but people who give life, which is sort of what unlocked the brilliance of that scene that he has with Winry and Scar.
Oh yeah, like trying to
where he's like,
your hands aren't for
like
this.
Do not fucking do this to yourself. This is not what you are meant to be. This is like you're going to regret this for fucking ever. And like at the time,
if you do this, you'll become Winry X. You'll have an Image comic series in the 90s.
It's gonna be poorly remembered. Sean Baby is gonna make fun of it.
Today on 1-900 Hot Dog.
So this scene actually unlocks a part of Ed's philosophy that, I think is probably the most interesting about it, right? Is that he has seen the other side. He has seen how little is there. He's seen that there is a dude who taunts you there. That's basically it. And then he'll probably send you to hell or something like that. We're not entirely sure. The only thing that we know is that, like, what you have here, right, counts a whole fucking lot.
If I could, I have a really weird interpretive frame for this one that you might be amused by.
Okay.
I want to take you back to the PS2 era mentally. PS2, PS3.
Okay.
I'm going somewhere with this. As far as renditions of struggling with the gods or an uncaring or cruel universe, like, there is a central intelligence that is a dickhole and is fucking with you.
Mm-hmm.
Ed is weirdly within the same narrative structure as Kratos and goes to
I knew you were about to talk about Kratos.
Infinitely less stupid place. And that's kind of a funny way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because they also had thoughts on other topics when making it. But there's an interesting thing in drama, especially genre drama, where you can just get a lot of momentum on actually looking at something unexamined. Because there are a lot of heroes that, just refuse to kill or don't kill.
Because it's wrong.
Because it...
just flatly because it's wrong.
And I kind of like the distance that Full Metal Alchemist gets out of the fact that, okay, you won't kill. And they actually ask the two important questions that make that interesting. Why don't you particularly kill? And how hard does that make your life? It makes many very specific things for him much harder and sometimes even easier. It also examines that angle, like when it comes to those chimera things. They're like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's
this
like,
guy
oh,
isn't a dick
this
sandwich.
is the guy who didn't kill us. Maybe we can sit down and listen to him for a second. Like, he's proved that he's not a psychotic asshole like everyone else who's ever fucking written my checks.
Yeah. And I guess I just do like that it has second order consequences for that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is just something that even some good stuff just skips over.
What I appreciate about it is that he sort of has this sort of, what would you call it? Like, he never really moralizes that much, but you sort of get the sense that he thinks that killing is for people who haven't thought of a better solution, and that there usually is one. Like, and he usually is the one to sort of come up with that solution. Like, killing is for people who haven't seen the shit that he has seen, who do not have the really, pretty deep appreciation for life and death and, sort of their place in the whole grand scheme of things as he does. And we will talk more about that when we get to Izumi.
I mean, he's someone who's sort of in the weird place of knowing, and it's why I keep thinking about the dumb Kratos thing, but knowing that his world's god is an immense dickhole who thinks this is very funny.
Who thinks that this is funny, that humans like, you fucking idiots.
And
the things that you fucking do in the service of, like, your stupid bullshit.
And I like the idea of a property, and I guess that's why I'm just a fanboy of this shit, but, like, your central protagonist knows this, maintains that as, like, line, and it is realistically difficult as Scar dribbles your head against the concrete.
Exactly, yeah. And this is during an era, right? This is during an era of shonen where some of the most popular of, shonen heroes are defined by, I have to kill this guy right here, right? Sasuke, for instance, from Naruto, defined early, I guess before, Itachi finally dies, halfway or 2/3 of the way through, I can't remember.
That was still the most contrived, whatever, go on.
We'll get to that in a coming episode.
Okay.
I can promise you. Sort of like defined by,
Okay.
I'm going to kill this guy. There are others, right? Like, the people defined by revenge. Fucking Guts. To name someone from a good series. Defined, by his quest for revenge against Griffith. And ultimately, like, the series ends with him abandoning that quest, which I think it's a really fantastic way to end it.
Oh, yeah, Guts basically deciding to live.
Guts is like, no, there's no fucking happy ending to this story if I keep being this way. I'm done. He's awful. He's an awful fucking asshole, and I will never fucking, win in life. Keep continuing to feel like this, right? It's good. It's really good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Add that to the Weeaboo Hell hot take pile. We enjoy Berserk. You might have heard of it. It's
it was good.
It had its charms.
It had one or two qualities about it that I enjoyed. So, yeah, in this era, right, where fucking Kenshiro, who never fucking flinches away from the idea of blowing someone's fucking head up.
Fucking meme body count on that one.
Just there's this entire fucking, not just the era. It's not just an era. There's this entire pedigree of shonen and seinen heroes who blow people the fuck up or chop them the fuck up or are looking to chop someone the fuck up, someone in particular. And here's this character who is not defined by his pacifism the way a character like, I guess technically Batman is, or I don't know, Josuke.
No.
Aang, Josuke. Characters who their pacifism is a very important part of a central thing to who they are. With Ed, much less noise is made about it, but it is still very important to who he is because it informs.
It is on an interesting wavelength there. That's a good point.
It informs because that he is a very solutions-driven character.
Yeah.
And he does not think of death as a solution. He thinks of death as basically just, if you are killing someone, it is because you've failed to come up with a better answer.
Yeah.
And so I like that, and it kind of speaks to his whole not insufferable genius kind of deal, but sort of do it right kind of thing that he's got going on because he knows what wrong looks like. He's seen all too well what wrong looks like.
The character does take on just directly on the question of, well, then what do you do?
No.
Which is often a difficult part in writing about this topic. If you're an opposite in the killing, but if you love that shit, then you can just Garth Ennis bump past that in 45 seconds. But I do appreciate that about it.
Moving on from Ed, we've got General Olivier Louise Armstrong, who has got this at the outset, right? Her whole philosophy is survival of the fittest, right? If you are
a lot of amusing posing around that.
If you are not,
she has a lot of fun just drawing her little Rosie the Riveter.
Exactly.
Shit stuff.
If you are not, able to survive at Briggs, then you will die at Briggs, that sort of thing. And she makes a lot of noise about that, and then just as much time is spent driving home just how everything she does for the men. Or for her men specifically.
It's a very amusing specific refraction of the sort of humanist heart behind this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you have this author very into the idea of these things that people, given the chance, do for each other at times, things that make humans worthwhile. And then she wants to make like a face hard-ass character. And it leads to this very singularly, I think, just very fun. I'm talking about it like a gag, but that's a personality disorder. It's more just like how this kind of humanist thing survives in the frozen, doomed asshole of the world.
Well, I want
in these pressure cooker situations, can someone essentially trying to be a human in this war machine, which I think is an interesting idea.
What I liked about it, or what I wanted to do, is sort of compare her a little bit against Kimberly, right? Who's all about, okay, so here is this strong thing, and here's that strong thing, and what will happen if they go up against each other? Who will win? And that is ultimately what he finds the most interesting, right? That's at the core of like why he's doing what he does, because he's just fascinated by like ultimately internet shit fights about whether Darth Vader could beat Wolverine or not.
Hello everyone, welcome to Kimberly's Death Battle.
I find myself on Team Vader.
Vader versus who in this case?
Wolverine.
Just fling him up. But TK is such a game changer. Whatever, go on.
Yeah, and like, anyway. Then there's Olivier Armstrong, who's not about your strong, but more about our strong. Like, yours, like, I sound like I'm having a fucking stroke. Armstrong's about our, Jesus.
I'm not editing this out.
The idea being that, together, right? Mm-hmm. As a unit, like, you are the strongest, and so are all of your colleagues, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And together, we are now the strongest. Because ultimately, in the frozen asshole of the world, we have only each other to look out for one another. And I like that philosophy a whole lot. Like, she demands everything of her men, right? But she can promise more than really anyone else can, because of, the effort that they put in and the sacrifices that they make.
I finally found the grown-up words for the idea I was trying to get earlier.
Sure.
The ground that she essentially shares with Mustang is like this whole franchise has this humanist heart, and how well can that thread survive in a fascist state?
Mm-hmm.
And those two are kind of like two sort of angles on that.
Yeah.
Because they're two people who are all about their men, what they can do for their men, what they can do for people, and still grow up in this context and still have like the marks of it on their character, and one of them struggles with that, and the other will go to her grave with that unexamined. But
well, what's fascinating about Mustang?
To the show's,
What's fascinating about Mustang is that his ultimate goal is to get sent to the fucking gallows for what he did.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas, Olivier's goal is to do as right by as many people as she can, as is possible, given, like, the state of the world.
Yeah.
And when literally the first opportunity that she is given to change the state of the world, she takes it without a fucking second's hesitation.
Yeah.
And that is what I find so admirable about her character.
You got to see which members of the cast of Valkyrie each of them were.
Mm-hmm. One of them even ended up, well, not with an eye patch, but blind.
Yeah.
Which, you know.
I feel like if she was involved with that, then after that bomb failed, she would just be hitting Hitler with a chair.
She pulls out her fucking gun. Like, fine, I'll do it myself.
Looks a lot more inglorious in that version.
That is something that, yeah, no, I fucking love Olivier. And she has, like, this... The one place where you can sort of tell that this was written in, frankly, by a character who is not from the United States in the era before Ferguson, is the character of General Miles within Armstrong's Briggs Brigade, who's
right.
kind of, you know, like, well, they did absolutely massacre my people, unapologetically. No one was dead. No one ever answered for it at all. But, you know, maybe I can prove to them.
There is definitely a gap in conventions.
A little bit of one. I think that is perhaps that, and I think the Sekuhara gags that occasionally show up in Full Metal Alchemist, and they're not too frequent, but they do show up, are probably the points about the series that aged probably the worst.
I'm trying to remember the Sekuhara gags, actually.
That one character who kind of shows up towards the end of the series, who becomes like the new Fuhrer after Bradley, just casually engages in it, and he's like, it's kind of thought of as like this hilarious thing about.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, mustache guy.
Yeah. That, and I guess there was the one automail engineer who has a sort of camp thing going.
Oh yeah, optics not fantastic.
Los optics indeed, but
nothing is ever flawless. So. See, that's the whole, like, we have to be fair about this kind of thing, where, like, the Miles character, in retrospect, does not work as particularly well.
The Miles thing is interesting. When it comes to Full Metal Alchemist and race, it's so, I think, focused on maybe more, we could call it the basic broad strokes issues that we sometimes forget, in terms of where we put our Amnesty International type of attention, of genocide bad, systemic ghettoization bad, that I guess this figure who is... The things that are wrong with him are not a privilege for a society to be contending with, because it's still just a shit thing. But her concerns are so much more on just the broad, maybe we don't have to purge wide groups of people for no reason. Maybe we don't need to invade entire parts of the world for no... I swear, why is it Bush in The Hague? God, what the fuck is this bullshit? Why is this man dying of natural causes?
On purely philosophical grounds, yes. I mean...
Madame Le Guillotine calls for cowboy blood. Hi, this is a Weeaboo Hell. It's a politically neutral podcast where I say things that can be taken against me in future publishings.
The Secret Service can fuck off right now. Go away.
Go on.
I'm in a fucking one-bedroom apartment with no... Like, what the fuck are you expecting me to be able to do?
Yeah, just me here with all this yellow cake uranium.
You mean, like, $700 of booze?
Yeah.
I'm not fucking throwing that. I spent way too much fucking money on it.
We were all very sad when Colin Powell died.
Devastated.
Okay, we can... Before we bury ourselves here...
Bob Dole thinks that Bob Dole should have probably packed a t-shirt. It's a little bit hot down here.
Toasty.
Alright, moving on from Olivier and the issue with Miles.
Doesn't age well because it's got that, not that model minority, but
well, it's just sort of like, well, I was beaten by the cops and then I became one.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is. Miles Zarek Adams.
Probably less embezzling.
Could you imagine? I don't know what there is to embezzle in Briggs.
Raw Philosopher's Stone material.
Okay. Okay. All right. So with that, we're going to move on to the character of Greed, and I want to take it back to my favorite scene from Vinland Saga. So
Discrimination?
yeah, yeah.
Alright.
We're gonna talk about that scene because it's fucking amazing, and I cannot get over it, even like 2 years after I've seen it.
Alright, so, there's a manga called Vinland Saga, which you should have put your filthy pawns on it if you've listened to half an hour of an anime podcast.
It is a show about the futility of violence, ultimately, and there is a wonderful scene, which I have described on this podcast. I'm thinking, maybe I can't remember.
You have.
I have, where this sad boy priest who has lost his faith because of all the horrors he's seen.
Just being alive in that time period.
It's not a good time. It's just really a bad time, and it's only going to get worse because I'm pretty sure this precedes the Black Death. I'm pretty sure that it takes place in a time a couple of centuries before the Black Death. Boy, oh fucking boy.
The first time someone coughs, you're just gonna get that hair standing on your neck.
Mm-hmm. So
Unlike now when someone coughs, it's positive.
You have, the young Prince Canute mourning the death of his surrogate father. The topic of love comes up, and this priest points to a dead body on the ground and says, that is actually love. Anything that humans feel towards one another is just a form of discrimination, where where the target of your discrimination is everyone except the people that you have quote unquote love for.
Yeah.
But here is this body on the ground, face down in the dirt, ready to feed the animals, return to the earth, and anyone who wants something from his corpse can have it freely. He's not going to stop them. This is the purest form of selflessness right here. And so here we have Greed, who on the other end of the spectrum is thinking, yeah, but like, to what fucking end?
Greed is a very just simple, well-rendered flip of expectations where it just basically ties a type of positive greed to what it is to like and enjoy people.
Like and enjoy, to want things. It is in fact a good thing to want things. It drives you forward in life to want, and it doesn't even have to be like money or material things. Like greed in the way that he describes it is a want for happiness, for love, for other people to have, something for. Go ahead. You have something
and it
to
sort
say.
of cycles back to that idea that the dwarf has made itself just more of a crazy asshole by trying to cut out these broad chunks of the human experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is interesting. Rereading Full Metal Alchemist was actually interesting this week because I was looking at the greed thing because I figured either we were talking about him or you were just wasting my fucking time. And there's an interesting overlap with two different quality levels because I'm about to dump on something again because I'm that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I read Dr. Stone on a plane ride where I was on that plane for like 2 days or some shit.
Was this back from Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember being annoyed by what is fundamentally the same argument, but how you phrase it sometimes just is everything. But there's a character named Ryu Sui who, the whole premise of Dr. Stone is that like the world ended, people are preserved, people are brought back in such and such order, and they have hit the point.
Did it actually end? It really just paused.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The world skipped scene.
They started in
the great inconveniencing of human civilization.
In the interim, they started building airstrips on women's heads.
So, but the point about this whole Ryusui character is that there's this world
between their eyes
where
he draws women weird. They look like fish.
Bug-eyedness aside, we have this world where like the ills of capitalism have been reintroduced, and they had been sort of fighting this one guy over that topic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that part's actually interesting, but circumstances come where do we bring back this one young industrialist who's the greediest person on Earth? And they do, and there's some positive results. And it's like, every page he just says like the line like, as the world's greediest person, I want this or that, and like I treasure my friends, whatever. And it's that same positive greed idea, which is why I was thinking about it while I was reading Full Metal Alchemist. And it really helps in exploring this idea of positive greed, that he's not fucking annoying.
Well, that's the thing with shonen sometimes, is that instead of actually having a character with a nuanced and well-developed worldview, they will have a character who, like, has attached themselves to one particular concept, right?
Yes,
and
that
they
is
will wax poetic about that thing long past the point where it stops being interesting.
Yes, because the guy's like this whole just eternal gag of just saying, "I desire this."
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you a Furby? Are you all preloaded dialogue? What's wrong with you? And I guess all characters are Furbies in a way, but is it a good Furby, or is it like one of those first line ones?
There were no good Furbies.
Do they still make Furbies? I kind of want to get you one for Christmas now, but
I really fucking hope they don't.
I just want to reiterate that if you own an NFT right now, what you own is a Furby, except it is not yours.
I'm gonna fucking screen cap it. I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna find your NFT. I'm gonna screen cap it and gonna tell everyone that it's mine.
I desire your Furby, and I'm going to right click it. I'll save it. I'm moving across some point here.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to say is that I enjoy the execution of greed, and they remember to layer in some initial ambiguity, to layer in some charm, which is important.
Well, he doesn't ever stay, like, absolutely, like, greed. The fun thing is that he does actually say that sometimes, right? He will,
Right.
remind people of who he is and what he's about, but he never, he always ends up to be a little bit more multifaceted than that. Because he's competing with Ling a lot of the time, right?
Yeah.
Who's got this whole, like, nah, you're fucking wrong, dude, kind of deal to him, and whose influence ultimately evolves his worldview, right? And even before his worldview becomes that evolved, he's not stupid. He's not rigid or anything like that. He just sort of knows who he is. He's like, yeah, greed can be a really good thing. Greed is what makes you want better things in life, either for yourself or for others. Greed is what, is your drive to protect something. You want that thing to survive. You want that thing that cannot defend itself to survive, and you want to protect it, right? It's like he lays out a pretty good case for, like how love, right, can in fact be selfish, and this is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right, and like it's what makes him originally one of the only homunculi of the stones to break off.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, because, like, I don't know, it's sort of like he thinks his way out of the sort of, like, trap of father's, sort of, what would you call it, stagnation.
Yeah.
Like how amazingly, like, stagnant father's mode of thinking in his particular philosophy is.
Which is
Just like, I am better than humans, and that's kind of like where it begins and ends.
Yeah.
And, like, we see, that expressed in Envy, as we were discussing earlier.
Envy, sort of a double beat with pride towards the end.
Yeah.
God, that'll be too much Dan Harmon in my fucking DNA.
Was this something on one of his podcasts or something?
There's also Rick and Morty jokes. I could just go and kill myself after this too, but I'll do it. I will not kill myself after this podcast. I am 80% psychologically stable, and my disorders go in other directions.
I am... Okay, so we were talking about fandoms earlier today because the inimitable Anne Rice passed away a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And she, quite famously, basically told anyone, if you write any fan fictions about my shit, I'm fucking coming for you in the night. Which, I love that. I love everything about that.
That's great. She's like a DC Lord of Order.
Anyway, as far as fandoms go, I'm pretty certain that the person who invented NFTs was a member of the Rick and Morty fandom. I can almost fucking guarantee you that those two things overlapped.
Would you like a dark glimpse of the future?
No, I've gotten enough of those lately. We're moving on.
Hype. You know what? I'm just gonna let that punchline, like a butterfly, just float away into the ether.
It's good. Learn to let go of things. It's helpful.
That is not my strongest skill. Got
Well-
a lot of greed and discrimination.
Well, now you've got it. Now you've got something to work on, I guess. We're gonna talk about Izumi Curtis because we're coming towards the end here. And Izumi Curtis, spoiler alert, is a cipher for Hiromu Arakawa. That is what I finally figured out.
I have a bad habit on this podcast where sometimes I will make a mock dumbfounded expression as a joke intended as content for this podcast that conveys nothing.
Unfortunately, you can only hear us. You cannot see us.
You cannot see the brilliant physical comedy that underpins everything we do.
I grew up watching cartoons, and so, like, in a sort of monkey see, monkey do kind of way, I often sort of what would you call it? Over emote sometimes in real life in ways that weird people out. Because I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, my role model growing up was Bugs Bunny.
Look, man, he's just communicating in a very cow and chicken manner as normal people do.
Yes, they do.
But Izumi Curtis.
Izumi Curtis is a cipher for Hiromu Arakawa, and I came to understand that once I watched Silver Spoon, and then went on to read Silver Spoon once the anime wrapped up. I believe that Silver Spoon itself has reached its conclusion. I have not read said conclusion yet. Arakawa, just for context, grew up on a farm in Hokkaido. And farming in Hokkaido is a very different thing than farming in like the United States, like the Midwest, where you've got like these gigantic fucking mega farms, right?
Right.
You have family farms in Hokkaido that exist on this fucking margin that is so goddamn tiny that one bad harvest or one bad year will fucking destroy everything for you. She has thus this really fucking deep appreciation for, you could call it like the cycle of, I don't know, like, I don't want to say the circle of life, but sort of like the grand order of things.
I mean, there are some basic universal ideas in this world. I don't think you need to be too ashamed that that's part of this whole thing. It's part of her whole thing. She has an appreciation for basically rural domesticity that she appreciates it as much as like Tolkien appreciates broadswords.
Yes, fair enough. Yeah, she has a this appreciation for the grand order of things and our very small yet important place in them, and how, you know, sort of what is like the most important couple of words that are said in this series. It's like all is one and one is all, right? All is the world and one is me. I am the world is me. I am part of this, it is part of me, right? That is at the very center of what Full Metal Alchemist is about, and ultimately what Silver Spoon is about. It's basically the same series when you strip away all the, you know, like, when you strip away everything but its bones. Its bones, the Silver Spoon and Full Metal Alchemist are basically the same show. They are all just about that concept right there, like sort of like finding your place in the grand order of things. Not so much in a fatalistic way, but in a sort of like, you need to sort of appreciate the way that the world works because it is hubristic of you to assume that like you are outside of it.
Very well observed. I have a dumb point for you.
Sure.
Out of all anime podcasts, that is going to be the smartest sentence with the morphemes fate, grand, order in it.
No!
Anyway, on to your actual point. Yeah, and I guess a lot of these things, a lot of the core conflicts internally and broadly are just based on misunderstandings or imbalances in this idea of one being all or all being one. Like the entire envy, pride thing is this disdain or rejection of things outside yourself, as if there is nothing of yourself.
I mean, why do you think she's always introducing herself as just a housewife all the time? It is an expression of humbleness, right? It is. Yeah. She is the opposite of father and his hubris, right? No, I'm not anything. I'm just a housewife. That's it. This series is full of people who make these hubristic mistakes because they think that, like, you know, they've found a hack, right? Mm-hmm. And she, you know, having been that way once herself, has learned, no, there isn't one. And it is sort of folly to think that there is. Now, you can change things, yes, but you cannot think of yourself as above them, because once you do, you're heading towards tragedy. Yeah. And so thus, she's not some grand alchemist, right? Even though she is. She's a housewife. It's also no mistake that that her husband is a butcher and that she works in a butcher's shop. this is like another sort of expression of the, Arakawa has this really interesting relationship with eating meat. She is not a vegetarian, but she has thought very, very hard about, what it means to ethically consume meat.
Right.
And
You see a lot of that in how the island stuff plays out.
and how the island stuff plays out, and how the again, Silver Spoon. Once you read Silver Spoon, it actually makes Full Metal Alchemist better,
Cool.
because you've got the protagonist of Silver Spoon sort of having to develop this philosophy that she has about eating meat from scratch, is that you need to fucking respect the thing that you have killed so that you can live, right? And that you do not necessarily, even in this day and age, need to consume in order to live. You owe it now that much more respect. And so that is like kind of what the character, I believe Hachiken is his name, has to like develop from the ground up. When he, there's this great arc where he has to raise a pig from a piglet, and this pig is then slaughtered and then turned into bacon. It's a really great arc. Anyway, the fact that, Sig is a butcher, right, and that, she works with him in the butcher shop is something of a, kind of like wink, wink, nudge, nudge towards, like, or rather just a literal, part of the metaphor, like a physical part of the metaphor of what her character is and what is at the center of her character, which is like, it is a cycle and you have to have respect for it.
Have respect for your place in it. I would say that is very well put.
Mm-hmm.
And you have redeemed us from Fate Grand Order.
I didn't fucking notice myself saying that.
It's the hideous thing about how my fucking brain works. As far as the construction and placement of characters and mentors go, a fun comparison can be made to Yoda.
Okay.
And how Yoda embodies, like, the interconnectedness of things, how big things are small things, big things, none of that matters. Mm-hmm. He embodies that. In that same, and he's like this humble figure. In the same way, she's like a humble figure who embodies this sort of wholeness and wheel idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just an interesting comparison. I don't have like a 3-page paper on how or why that is, whether that's even a intentional or subconscious citation or a non-citation at all, but it's an interesting overlap at least.
One moment of hers that I really like a whole lot was when she never is more upset at the boys as she is when she learns that they attempted human transmutation, right? And she then basically says, "You two are expelled," and it's her kind of fun way of saying, "You graduate, you understand now."
I hope you enjoyed the bottom of the human experience. Here's your diploma.
Here's your diploma. Kind of like, and gives you like kind of a kick on the butt on the way out the door.
Oh, man. Real educators were so involved.
Mm-hmm. It's...
Grumble, gripe.
Actually, thinking through all of this has actually given me like a greater appreciation for Izumi Curtis than I have had, up until now. I might rewatch all of Full Metal Alchemist in a little bit once I'm done rereading all of Naruto. Oh my god.
I think... Do you want to do the pregnancy announcement? Is this our gender reveal party for...
Well, we've been alluding to it this entire time.
Alright, everyone. So, we talked about some of our favorite stuff recently. And Komi-san. And it is to set our psychological table for a project that I am super excited for and hate myself for ever suggesting.
I think it was my idea.
I hate myself for co-signing. I'm like Himmler here.
Jesus.
As a sort of companion to what we call the Coriad, we had our core episodes. We tried to break down what happened, why is it like this, what could anything have been done, and it's just fun to look directly at individual parts of it instead of sort of a broad sweep.
Mm-hmm.
We are dividing up the whole manga run of Naruto into I don't know how many parts.
It's going to be, I believe, 10 parts.
10 parts, I think that's 70 chapters a piece.
Yes, it is a 700 and something chapter long manga.
Got to complete its run, unlike Bleach, in which we would just have to talk about it dying on the vine at one point.
Oh no, if we did this for Bleach, it would literally just be jokes at Bleach's expense for about 6 or 7 episodes.
Which is fun, but there might be another gear here. We'll see how it comes out.
Yeah,
we are going to...
The idea is that we do a history of Naruto rather than just spend 10 episodes dunking on it. That's not my intention.
The rise and fall of the Narutoan Empire. In fact, afterwards, I might even take all those files and, like, I don't know, sometimes, like, they're little isolated hardcore history tracks that are searchable on their own. I might try to do that, too. We'll see.
Okay, let's see.
But we are going to do a history of the rise and zombification of Naruto.
Because it has never actually fallen. We've still got Boruto happening, and
but it's more of a Lich King kind of situation.
Yeah, I would say so.
And I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So before we do that, to remind myself I even like shonen action, here we are talking about Full Metal Alchemist.
The best one.
Off the top of my head. And I hope you enjoyed it.
All right.
Anyway, this is Weeaboo Hell.
And it is Weeaboo Hell.
Bob Dole is toasty. Should we look into webtoons? There might just be webtoons out there that are great. I don't even know. Might be worth it sometime.
Was that the Fauci ouchie on that side or that side? Oh. Well, what was the bigger needle? Okay, that was the Fauci ouchie.
Okay.
Okay, so